Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As always, a very warm welcome to Desi Sportscast live stream. It's good to have you all joining us, either watching live. I hope we can encourage more people to join in and watch us live and get your questions in to the main man. But it's a warm welcome to the main man himself. Nevin, good afternoon, my friend. How are you today?
Yes, all good, all good. Does the word warm make you nostalgic?
What's that?
Like, does the word warm make you nostalgic about summers and
Oh
good
dear.
times?
I think just to share with the viewers, last week we did the podcast and it started snowing, the live stream rather. It started snowing halfway through, and I just gave Nevin a glimpse outside my window, and I think I sent shivers down his.
Yes.
It was that cold, and it got worse actually. It didn't stop for I think 16 hours or something, so it was pretty much snowed in the day after. And a little bit of weather change in England, whether it's raining a lot or windy or too hot or too snow, and we can't cope. We're one of those nations that we're not used to extremes of weather, even if it's for a day. But yeah, it was
Yeah,
very
you
very
need to
cold.
you need to take a break, come to Kerala, enjoy the sun.
Oh man,
Because the weather
honestly,
will not be up.
honestly, don't. Even if I was allowed, which I'm not at the moment. I would be there in a flash if I could, no doubt about it, because I do get jealous of every time you shoot any video anywhere in Kerala. It seems to be amazing, and I can't wait to come and witness it. So yeah, really looking forward to that. But how's your week been anyway? More importantly.
The usual, there's a lot of football, catch up. A horrendous week thanks to Pep Guardiola, where like three of my fantasy players not even starting. But otherwise, it's all good. Like, as long as there's football, you can't complain. Right? There's work, there's fun. That's a life that I signed up for. So, you know.
Well, there's one thing we can say there's not a lack of, and that is football. But just before we get onto the football, and as always, after I do the show and it's Monday morning, I think we're going to find topics for the following week. There's always topics in football, big topics as well. So we'll come to those in a minute. But I have to say, I have to start with a bit of news that I saw this morning, just reading some headlines, that cinemas are going to be allowed to be open 100% from tomorrow in India. It's just amazing here, the difference. I mean, our lockdown's been extended to March the 7th. Even though the vaccine rollout, I think 7 or 8 million of the most vulnerable and over 80s and 70s have been vaccinated, but our lockdown has been extended. And when I start seeing outdoor concerts in New Zealand and cinemas now being open in India, it just seems, oh my goodness, where have we gone wrong here? That life is getting back pretty much to normal everywhere else apart from Europe. And
See, I have no explanation. I have an explanation for New Zealand. I have no explanation for India at all. Look at where I am. For example, I am in Kerala, and Kerala has got the highest amount of COVID cases of 6,000. And Kerala is one of the smallest states in the country. So, are you telling me that the entire country has lesser number? Because I think the total number they are citing was around 10,000 cases for the entire country, and that is ridiculously low. I can only come up with one answer: is that they're not testing enough, or they don't care enough, or because whenever I move out of the state, the couple of times that I did, I realized Kerala is way more. They're putting more precautions out there. Most people do still wear masks here, and there's like hand sanitizers available in front of supermarkets and everywhere. But like when I went to Chennai, for example, I didn't see any of this. I saw public transport bus with like no mask, not even on their chins, or not even on their cheeks, or whatever. It's just I can't for the life of me, unless Corona's like said, hey, listen, like we can't do India. India's just too much of a mess, and he'll be like, we just skip this country. Because I have no other explanation for it. I've like literally witnessed people not care about this disease. Everybody's just out there. Or it's the sun, I don't know. But even the sun makes no sense because there's part of the country that won't get that kind of sun.
yeah,
It's not just Kerala out there. There's like India, and there's extreme winters and everything. So I mean, there's both. I have no explanation for it. I am, in some ways, I know it sounds very privileged. I am happy to be in a state where they are at least testing and there is a good number, because I think that's more believable. I mean, I feel more comfortable believing that, my healthcare system is at least still out there doing their job and, trying to vaccinate people and all that. But even in a so-called, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of this already. The Kerala is supposedly a little more progressive in terms of, especially when it comes to, healthcare and all that. Even here, I see that I keep hearing stories of people not going to vaccination. There's just some, taboo, some stigma attached to vaccination, and I mean that's another. I think governments will now start making ads and getting just like it was for polio, just like it was for every other disease. I think we have to like, really roll out a more these PSAs and stuff like that, because right now I think it's not really working out. People have just given up. They do have even rave parties happening in Goa. I mean, as per I read a Vice article in which all this is pretty common out there. So yeah, I understand looking from outside. I mean, India's got everything to be jealous of, but I don't necessarily think that is a reflection of reality.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is looking from the outside and where we are, and you think we've got a first-rate health system and measures in place, but to see how far behind we are in terms of opening up, and it's one of the things that people do highlight, that the way we measure deaths and infections and what have you is a lot more stringent than other places outside Europe. So yeah, that you don't always read into the numbers in the same way, but it's just the fact that life is opening up. And I was speaking to a colleague Prasan, and he was saying that in Bengaluru, all the bars are open and what have you, and it's another life. But hey, we will get there, I'm sure, here in the UK soon.
And when you get there, you will feel much more relief and not like skeptical whether this is actually true or should you be doing that.
Well, do you know what? We were talking about this in our group the other day, what's it going to be like, because we've now been accustomed to be extra cautious, especially in my circle of friends and colleagues and work friends and what have you, that we are really taking everything seriously, all of us, down to the last person, that when it does open up, what we're going to feel like, what's the first hug, that's who's going to do that, and it will be very strange, but something.
I mean, it took me around like 2-3 weeks to get used to it.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, I wasn't happy when somebody approached near me. I was like, why are you so near? I still get that these days. I mean, I still have that big problem of the social distancing is, I think, now put in your head so much that suddenly afraid. The moment somebody is near you, even in a supermarket, you're like, why are you so close?
Yeah.
Like really fast.
Yeah.
So I think that will take a lot of. For me, I got put into a very tough situation. I went through that cold of series, and I was working with like Fisher community.
Of course.
And they didn't give a damn about social distancing or mask or anything. So I was like, hey, I mean, there is a life beyond mask as well. These people are living it, so might just jump in. Because as a journalist, as a filmmaker, you can't be alien. You try to blend into the space as much as possible. So the moment I was wearing a mask in a different accent, this huge looking guy with like a camera and all, I am anyway not helping my camouflage. The little few things that I can do is take off a mask or try to blend in. So I have no option but to get in. I think 1 month over there sort of changed me compared to life post-lockdown.
Some of these things will carry on, and for the better, really, like sanitizing and looking after the environment. So hopefully a couple of positives from that. But moving on to
generally I've had like nasal problems, like sinusitis and allergy to dust and all. So in some strange way, wearing the mask has helped me, because now I'm just like inhaling lesser amount of dust. So I mean, I think as a practice, I would like to keep doing this. And it's now made, it's now fashionable. People are not going to like attack you for wearing a mask. Now you can wear a mask and I mean, these are
Yeah.
going to be like permanent.
Yeah, and there used to be a lot of judging, and especially a few years ago when you see people from Southeast Asian nations on holiday in Europe and in airports, and they all used to be masked up, and you think, really? But now you understand, totally. It's a practice that they've developed and kept on going, which is not a good thing, and I think it's going to carry on here as well, especially come the next winter. But yeah, strange times as we continue to talk about, and it's been almost a year. So yeah, it's a few positives, but a lot of things to look forward to. Hopefully this year, 2021. But one of the things that also surprises me is I know you don't get the credit in terms of the people, especially very high up in certain organizations, to listen to what you say, because I've lost a number of times you've said something and it's happened a couple of days later, and the biggest one is that the owner of Chelsea, I'm pretty sure, is listening to this podcast somewhere, or message has got to him, because you've been banging on about, we need to get rid of Frank, and I told you here it's not got to that level. There's still a lot of support for him, and we talked about why there was a lot of support, why he's got a lot of leeway. But we talked about this on the podcast last Sunday, and what did I wake up to on Monday morning? Goodness me, Nevin, man, you've got a lot of influence, whether you know it or not, but word gets out. What Nevin says eventually reaches the people it needs to.
Yeah, I had to text a woman and Marina and say that, I don't want my name out. Because I don't want to hurt my relationship with Lampard. He's still a legend. Yeah, but
I know you've been saying it, but it was a big shock. It was a big shock. They had a good cup win. It was here, and I was trying to relay to you here that there's murmurings. Things are starting to a little bit. He's getting a bit more criticism, but there wasn't any talk of get rid of Frank here. And we've talked about the reasons why. He's a legend. He's a young English manager, and he was getting a lot of leeway. But then the Monday morning, I was surprised. I know you probably weren't, but I was very surprised.
I was surprised a lot of people were surprised. Because for me, I think he had already reached that point. I think Chelsea has always been brutal. I mean, that's how they function. It's the identity. I mean, I feel sorry for Lampard. When I'm sure as a Chelsea player, he would have seen this as a player as well. And this is what he would have expected. And I mean, I get the English hype about Lampard, but it did give a sense that he was struggling with a lot of players, with a lot of tactics and all that. And let's be honest. Chelsea did pay all that money for Havertz and Werner and whatnot for them to not play or not perform. So it was bound to happen. There is always question. I think when Fernando Torres was brought in, I think Carlo Ancelotti suffered because of that. I don't think he really wanted it. Like Torres came and it was a surprise. This element of pressure to now get Torres to start scoring goals as well. So Frank probably wasn't helped by the fact that he signed all these players, very exciting young prospects, and there was a sudden pressure to perform. But you also see the moment Frank was sacked and Thomas Tuchel was appointed. After the first match, I think the likes of Martin Keown and all of them were saying, "Oh, what a boring Chelsea side! You're just passing sideways, penetration." I'm like, this is so classic British. First manager, probably had less than 48 hours to coach a team. He managed to draw against a decent Wolves team. What were you expecting? Were you expecting them to tiki-taka their way past Wolves 10 times? I don't know. Just
the fact. Firstly, to that Wolves game, the fact that a young English midfielder wasn't starting, that didn't go down well. We're talking about Mount here. He's been one of the, let's face it, I think you'd agree, he's had a good season up to now. One of the few Chelsea players who can say that. But I think there has been a bit of backlash, and I think they're lucky there's no crowds. I think the reception at the Wolves game would have been quite unusual for Tuchel. because a couple of days after, well, even a day after the sacking, for him to take over, because, like you say, Frank is a legend. He is a young English manager, and even yesterday I was listening to a podcast, and they had a couple of guys from the Chelsea forum, and they were not happy with the decision. Frank has got a lot of friends, as you can imagine, in the media, who are still, saying this was his first blip, and the decision was wrong, is wrong. So Tuchel is starting with quite a few things against him. He's got most of the media against him, most of the fans against him, and I'm not surprised with the reaction.
Which is the best. Put him under pressure, because I don't want somebody to come there and relax. Chelsea job is pressure, and let's be honest, there's a lot of money at stake if you don't qualify for the Champions League. And Chelsea has invested in the summer, taken this opportunity when other teams couldn't buy a lot of players due to the financial hits, COVID and all that. Chelsea gambled. They gambled big in the summer. So are you expecting ruthless owners or anybody just sit tight and say, it's okay, Frank can take 3-5 seasons to do this legacy? And let's be honest, Bharat, have you seen anything in that Chelsea side that suggested that Frank was building something? Except Mason Mount, who's a very exciting young player, and I'm sure he'll start featuring. He's very bright, talent, hardworking kid who is willing to play multiple positions. So there's no way Mount is going to stay away from that team. And I think in that particular match, I think the coaches went for what was an experienced side to play that particular formation. That's got really nothing to do. A lot of people were upset Reece wasn't starting, but Callum Hudson-Odoi really performed well in that position. Now,
yeah, he did. Yeah.
So give it some time. This has always been the Chelsea way. Liverpool fans would say, Klopp was given.
No, but as a Chelsea fan, you say it's always been the Chelsea way. Are you happy with the Chelsea way?
Yeah, as long as you bring titles and success or anything, I don't know what. I was more sad when Di Matteo was. Yeah. Let's be honest. He just won a Champions League and an FA Cup, and you sacked that fellow. So why should Frank Lampard be any different? He deserved a better chance. He won you the Holy Grail. That is what Roman Abramovich wanted. In whatever way possible. Let's not judge him on the kind of football they played, but they won the trophy. So I was really sad when Carlo Ancelotti was sacked. I was a big fan of Jose Mourinho in his first stint. I actually thought Conte was not backed in terms of transfers. I think if Ancelotti and Conte were given the kind of signings that he wanted, things would have changed, and that made him cranky and the fight Diego Costa didn't help as well. So if you ask, is this perfect? No, it's absolutely not perfect. It's not how we want it to be. But how many football coaches actually last long? You look at Mourinho. We all, judge Chelsea for sacking him. He went and did the same thing at United. He very likely losing his bench already at Tottenham. So now you understand why Chelsea did it. And I think what I've always liked about Chelsea is that they've always stayed ahead of the game. So even when the loan army thing, look at the ethical aspect of it. Yeah, it's not, hold a lot of players, whatever. But they were clever and they did it when it was legal to do all that. So they've always stayed ahead of the game, and that's how businesses run. So if you look at it from a very professional point of view, I think that they're just very ruthless in their business, and they want titles to sustain what the club is about, and that's what you get as a Chelsea fan. You see a title, a cup every 2 years. I think Frank Lampard's season is a one-time event. Otherwise, even in disaster season, you win an FA Cup or you win a League Cup or something is there, or a Europa League. We are a spoiled club that Europa League is not even celebrated. We're like, nah, that's just a random hobby.
Oh no, I ranked that trophy.
Excited. Yeah, so.
No, I just want to share a comment from one of our most loyal viewers and listeners, Shubnam Nayak, and he says Chelsea should show Madrid the kind of patience, I think he's trying to say, the Madrid do, but they're not known for that, because Madrid used to have this of getting rid of managers, but they've shown a lot of patience with Zidane, But you say that I'm holding you here to account, and I shouldn't. It's unfair. But you say, can you see Chelsea building anything? But then you're happy with the changes in managers.
It's different ways of functioning, I guess. As long as the managers are being paid and they're not like, let's not get into Indian football kind of never went. They're sacked and then they don't get paid. At least they're getting paid. That's a professional circle, right? If you ask me from a ethical, point of view, or something, I'll say it's sad that good managers don't get time to build their dynasties. But let's be honest, who's done it? Like I can think of Klopp in the recent years, but like who else?
Pep.
Who else has done this?
Pep is doing it, and so there are examples. But I just want the other thing that came out of the sacking, and obviously that's been the news here, is that a lot of the pundits in the media feel that some of these big signings weren't Frank's. They were more about the owners and the players that they wanted in. So when you get that 250 million spend, a lot of that wasn't down to Frank wanting that spend, and then obviously those players were not performing to the expectations, and they thought, are we going to have another Kepa sort of situation where we pay out huge sums and then the player just doesn't perform? So do you think that had anything to do with it, that Frank wasn't...
Let's look at the signings, for example. Thiago Silva is a good signing. You can't really blame anybody for signing Thiago Silva. I think he's brought in some sense of the confidence in the defense. Mendy was a signing that was required. He needed a backup or like another keeper because Kepa's confidence was so all over the place. Ben Chilwell was as much a Frank Lampard signing as it could possibly be. And he still started everything. I think the only one doubt we have is Havertz. But like all these interviews prior to all these big stories from the Athletic, I remember reading Matt Law right about it. All of them were telling how Frank and Peter Cech played a huge role in convincing these youngsters to come, especially Werner, especially Havertz and all that. So, what are you saying that he's not involved? So was he just doing it because it's part of his job? Because then he was quite convincing if it was just part of his job to even go to places, meet these players, try to convince them to sign your project. So to think Werner wasn't a Frank Lampard signing is also a little bizarre. And I think it's just British media just cooking things up. Of course, maybe a Havertz was opened up and Frank must have said, I probably prefer like a English player, or I don't know what he wanted in his mind. Of course, that discussion might have happened, but it's not like you pass up an opportunity to sign a really good talent. I know he's not performed, but if you look at the stats when Havertz was signed, he was called a generational talent. He was called something like a cross between Michael Ballack and Ozil. And why would you not want to sign a mix of Ballack and Ozil, right? So I don't know. I think it's a lot of British tabloid business.
Yeah, well, that will come into it. That will come into it because for Frank, where do you go after Chelsea? It's a tough one, isn't it? He's not going to get any of the top 6 clubs. He's not going to come to Leicester, so he's been put into a position as well now. Where do you go if you're Frank?
I'm sure he'll get his opportunities. Apparently, I think was it the Athletic who wrote that he turned down a good offer in the summer to take the Chelsea offer. It's Chelsea. So
I don't think it's easy. Yeah, I don't think I can't. Who's the last English manager that was successful in Europe? It's very, very difficult, and you can see where English managers are rated. They're not even rated in England, so I can't see big European teams coming in for English managers. So that's going to be
significantly more as well. So that doesn't help their cause.
Yeah. But moving on to the new guy, so you think he's the right guy for Chelsea?
I would have liked Nagelsmann. I think I like what he does, and I think he would have been a better player to unlock the potential of Havertz and Werner and all that. But you can't really complain about the signing. These are good coach who's managed Dortmund, managed PSG, taken them to a Champions League final, managed egos of the likes of Neymar and Mbappe. These are big players, they're not easy handling players. So something about him seems nice, but like I might be going overboard with my love or justification for the Chelsea way of things, but it is a Chelsea way of things, right? So you're not looking at somebody to build a dynasty for 10 years. You're looking for like somebody to bring your success for the next 2 years. So that way, I don't think this hurts. And if you can get the Germans rolling, add something more. I think Chelsea has really struggled against big teams because they've not really been tactically good. It's not like player to player Chelsea were bad. I think they were out, in terms of, I can't say outclassed, but like in terms of tactics at least, I think most of these managers that they face have been better off in terms of preparing the teams. And I think maybe Thomas Tuchel can, in some ways, compensate for that, add more guile and more industry and everything.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because he's going to get a bit of an insight into the Premier League because your boys have got Burnley, and you can't get a more traditional Premier League team than Burnley and Sondage and the way he plays. So we'll see how he.
And a team in form. Burnley are playing.
Yeah, but they're not your usual open attacking football, is it? They're going to be tough. They're going to be strong. We know what Burnley and Sondage's teams are like, so it'll give Tuchel a bit of a. We'll see where he stands, although it's still very early days. But then you've got a big game against Jose's team on Thursday, so he'll have to get used to it. There's no easy. It's not like the German league, or definitely not like the French league, where you have quite a few easy games. It's something he has to get used to, doesn't he? He's a top manager, so I'm sure he knows what he's getting himself into. But it's only once you start doing it, managing in this league.
He himself said in the interview that the general expectation is that he won't last so much. So he himself knows what it is.
Well, this is one of the things that was raised. What if he doesn't get into the top four this year, and he doesn't win a trophy because you're not in the League Cup, you're still in the FA Cup, but if you don't win the Champions League and what have you, will he get sacked?
It'll be harsh, but I don't think he'll get sacked because I don't think there's a lot of people out there to replace. So unless you get like a Nagelsmann to come, or very elite managers out there who will be available in the summer to come take up this position. So that would save him, I guess. But again, it's a research. So maybe top 4 is in priority, but if he's not improving the team, then obviously.
Interesting times. Yeah, something that we'll obviously come back to, and I'm going to get a lot of complaints because we've spoken too much of your boys, Chelsea. But it is a big story, Chelsea. But coming to another big story that stood out for me, and it's something you highlighted and I read about, and I was taken a little bit surprised about, was, and I think it was, to be fair, Ron, owner of Orisha, who retweeted something that Bart Jindal, the owner of BFC, either gave an interview or wrote an article about the financial situation in Indian football, ISL especially, and it really opened my eyes. Well, not opened my eyes because we knew it's not a lot of money in there, but it's just the timing of it that surprised me. I know they've changed their manager, and you called it out that it could be for financial reasons. There was a change, but what was your reaction to that article or interview, and him raising it at this stage of not only the season, but in terms of the ISL? Everybody knew what they were signing in for. They knew the structure. They knew the payment details. It's just the timing that surprised me.
I mean, timing is a little odd considering the club is going through multiple other issues. I don't think the financial details would have been the best way to add some cheer or positivity to their lives. But that aside, I think it's an open secret. Like we all knew these clubs will making losses. And I think Marcus of Times of India also said that there's no football club in India that's making profit, like zero clubs.
Well, I
So
think Bengaluru were the only club that had declared or were rumoured to have made a profit.
yeah,
Surprisingly.
yeah, I mean they are saying around 25 crores loss. And if you look at how Bangalore has been reacting to the last few summers, it's not even like they've gone out there and been aggressive and getting players. And something. So you always got the sense that they're trying to tone down, trying to be more clever with their signings, be more sustainable. So I mean, Jindal Group is big in it, big and mighty, powerful, and for Parchin to come out there and say, is I think a rallying call for all the owners and teams to say, hey, enough is enough. We've had this for long. We pay extraordinary franchisee fees. We don't get any share of broadcast money, and enough is enough. We need to, act together, and it's essentially safe football because then they can invest that money elsewhere, or they can be interested in running the team itself, if not investing elsewhere. So uh, I hope FSDL is listening. I hope AF is listening. We as journalists highlighted this from the first season of ISL. We got a lot of flack from fans. Everything you're aggressive. You're not really, you don't want anything new and everything. So I mean, I am personally tired of talking about this. I've talked about this a lot. I've gotten in trouble for telling this, but we all knew this would happen, right? Like we all knew if FSDL is owned. I mean, 30% of FSDL is Star Sports. That's a broadcaster, and I mean, I know the deal is for 10 years, but like, what happens after 10 years? Is Star going to be like, we have to forget that we are a broadcaster. We just, we're just owners of FSDL or like members of FSDL and wait for the highest bid? No, right? I mean, if I've invested 30%, I will ensure that the broadcast rights remain with me. And that is a problem, right? So there's no bidding, there's no Sony coming in, another, BBC, I don't know, anybody coming in and saying, hey, we want to bid this for a better price. And that's how you really, rake up the money, and that's how teams start getting some spoil in the bid. But I don't see how it happens. And so I hope this is the start of a new revolution where ISL sides also realize, hey, I mean, unless we start talking out, then nothing's going to happen. And I really hope this is the start of something new because, I mean, you saw Pune FC fall. You saw somebody like Rohan having to, take his club from Delhi, a very nice position otherwise. I mean, who would want to lose Delhi? But he had to move to Odisha for financial reasons. So you don't want more clubs to struggle, lose interest, and that eventually affects players' salaries, contracts. Especially if you look at what has happened to the I League in the last few years, you hear multiple stories of clubs not paying, players, clubs not honoring contracts. Even recently, I think one of the Kerala clubs was accused of not paying the wage, and they levied a fine and all that. So it's a mess, and it starts from the top. So if ISL is not making money, I League is not making money, and then the state leagues are not making money. So it's that trickle down sort of economy for Indian football. So it's very important that they make money and not run losses.
Yeah, and I mean, it did. I mean, what surprised me that you said the media and yourself called it out from season 1. We're in season 7. You had the example of Pune, but this isn't something new. They knew the finances of running a football club, but they signed up to it. This is my point. That why raise it now? You said they've got a 10-year deal, so if you're looking at it, they've got another 3 years. What's going to happen when promotion relegation comes? Just imagine if there's no team that's big enough, we say in the EPL, that can't go down. If the likes of BFC, and please don't, I'm just using this as an example, have a bad season, get relegated, what's going to happen? Can they sustain themselves in the I-League with a similar budget? Because contracts, I know, sometimes are not worth the paper they're written on, but they still have to be in some sort of way adhered to. Why was this not seen 3-4 years ago?
I will rephrase that question and put it back to you. why is it too bad to be relegated, right? Because then you don't have to pay a franchise fees. There is no broadcast revenue that's getting changed. You don't get anything anyway in the ISL as well. So it's not like you lose a lot of money. You will probably save 40 crores by getting relegated. You earn money by getting. So I mean, it's so confusing, right? It's a mess. I mean, what is the orders of playing in ISL except the fact that there is more coverage, TV coverage, so you can probably get more ads and more business that way of playing in the ISL because the I League doesn't do the same coverage. But you need more. You need TV revenue for sure, and you need more. Probably a lesser franchisee fee. You need a franchisee fee.
I don't think you do. No, I don't know why they've signed up to this franchise. Yeah, you need a franchise fee to join the club, but on a yearly basis, and you don't get the profits from this club that you joined. I don't see how it was going to be sustainable. I think it was a question of all these big rich owners subsidizing the growth of football. But even those in tough times, they're all businessmen. End of the day, very, very good businessmen. There's only so much they can sustain in terms of losses, and especially with Bart having an IPL franchise and the money he's getting for the Capitals, he must be thinking, there's just not the same sort of deal there when it comes to the ISL. I don't know if that's what opened his eyes.
In fact, even something as not so common as Kabaddi is about to break. So I think even Kabaddi, they've found a way to, you get past the challenges. But football is just way far out. Yeah. Do
you think I mean, you say hopefully this will be a start of something. Do you think that it could go down the route of what happened here when the Premier League was set up by the clubs themselves? They set it up, broke away from the Football League, but now everybody knows the best decision the clubs have ever made for football here. It's the best league in the world. Do you think Indian football is at that stage where all these owners could say, look, we want to break away from the ISL now, form our own league?
No, I don't think so. I think the best shot was in, I think, 2006 when the likes of Vijay Mallya thought, they needed to break away from the I League and start something new. I think then if it had happened, it would have actually changed. But right now, I think with Reliance involved, it's very, very difficult to break away. They have got stranglehold across the country and it's their league. So as these business owners themselves, all these teams, they wouldn't want to, be at crossroads and have to choose between Reliance and profitable football team because they've got other things at stake, right? It's not just a football team that they run. They've got other businesses and everything. So honestly, I think I don't think they're going to start a rebuild. The only ones who would have done that would have been the Kolkata Giants and the Goan teams and all those clubs. But they've also now been bought by the project, and now there's no returning. Now we're just hoping that the ISL themselves are fair to the rules and they figure out a good.
And to be fair, again, I have to go back to the interview we did with Ranjit Bajaj. He called it out. He's been banging this drum for a while now about the financial aspect of football and how it doesn't work, and it will catch up. And it seems to be catching up now because if BFC are making this loss, I know their budget is higher than, let's say, for example, just picking a name out, Northeast United or teams like Chennai, but if they're starting to say, we can't sustain this sort of level of loss, it's got to that stage where Ranjit called it out. The only football association that doesn't have any control over its national league in terms of broadcasting or any other say. So, but in a way, I know I don't agree with the timing. I was surprised with that, but I suppose no time is bad time to call out something like this. So, it's just a question of what will everybody else say? What will the owners say?
If you look at the phrasing of it, it was never like calling out more. It was like
highlighting.
Like, sort of highlighting, because he was sort of like requesting Mrs. Ambani to maybe look at it. Maybe it didn't feel like he had power. Parth felt like he was just helpless, and as an observer, that's not a very pretty sight, but like right now I think how Indian football works for me is I close my eyes and I hope that these things will get better. Because there was a time in my life around like say 2015, 17 when I was writing about it. I was very vocal on Twitter and everything about these things, and I really didn't help my case, for example. To fight this seems to be impossible. So we just hope that that this eventual wave that's coming towards us is actually something that you can ride on and not it's not a tsunami.
And let's hope something does come out of it. Big, I don't know about changing the contract or the broadcasting, but he started a conversation. I suppose that's the least he's done, but hopefully there'll be some action done on the back, because what we don't want is another Pune. Because I think that's really bad for football. Just when they've expanded the league and they're going down the path.
And if you remember, they had issues with the Kantirawa also. So state is also not helping. And that's the case with Bangalore. At least with Odisha, they found a home and a state that supports them. But like I know in Kochi they pay exorbitant rates to get that stadium, and they are considering maybe Calicut. I know Chennai pays massive amount of money to play at jail, and so all these clubs in the for some help. It's not going to come from FSTL and AFF. Can at least the states interfere and say, hey, we're going to subsidize because you support our talented players, you give them a platform. Why can't we subsidize venues? At some point, somebody has to come in. And I also hope that if this revolution happens, they also consider the IDP because they're part of the process. They are the foot soldiers for Indian football in the country. So I hope it's a revolution that involves all.
Yeah, absolutely, and you want to get down to the stage where each city-state is desperate to have an ISL team, and will do anything to get an ISL team and keep an ISL team, and that goes to providing facilities. Obviously, the ideal solution is for the clubs to have their own stadiums, but we're a long way away from that. The finances are just not there. But you want to, be in a similar position to what the franchises in America have. The cities
if I may interrupt
bidding.
You there.
Yeah.
If I may interrupt you there, a club like Oval FC has its own stadium, and they're planning a bigger stadium. They play in the Kerala Premier League, so it's also down to what the owners want and what they think is the path out, the way out. It's not always about oh no, let's not think about stadium right now. It probably is difficult in a place like Bangalore because land rates are extremely high for the performing, but a good football club need not be in the center of the city. It can be in the outskirts also. It helps fans also in some way who can, go there without affecting the traffic so much of the city and all that. So if a problem can dream of a stadium, and they've already done it in some levels of making a small stadium which 11 side can play that. They're the only side which owns a stadium together, for example. But they've started a trend. I know there's another club that's doing it. They're having their own stadium, so it is picking up. And I know a lot of clubs in Bangalore, smaller clubs, who have turfs, so they also rent it out and also play their matches there. So these are artificial turfs, not ideal for football, but at least they have found out that is a part. So when the team is not practicing, they rent it out, so there are people who come play and use it as a team. That's money for the club. ARA in Gujarat does that. They've got a good state infrastructure there. So it's also the will. And they are clever businessmen. So as long as the roadmap is not put out there, they're not going to invest. But if a good roadmap is put out there, I'm sure Arjun and the likes will immediately invest.
Yeah. Like I say, it has to be in a business sense a way that is sustainable. Mohan Bagan have got their own ground, haven't they? But I can't see 80k playing there. Unless they develop it, but we'll see what happens. But at least he started the conversation. Maybe a couple of years down the line, but he started it. Probably seen the insights from the IPL and how much he had to pay for it. But at least he's getting a good return, and he knows that he's got a good franchise there. So we'll see what happens with that. But turning on to a bit more brighter news and the happenings in the ISL this week, and what a week it's been for Northeast United FC, and again, I'm going to call out Shubnam Naik. He's putting on good conversations here, but I don't know if he's read the script because he says, "What about Khalid Jamil as manager? Um, what can you say? Beating ATK, beating Mumbai. He's had a good start to his latest stint as manager of."
I think we discussed this earlier as well. I think Khalid is a proven guy. Like, what more can you possibly want as a coach? He's won the I League with less fancy world,
But even
like
then, you must be surprised with the impact he's had to beat those two teams in the first week, playing pretty much the same formation as.
three teams. So he's won 3 matches to
Yeah, 3 matches, but these two big teams. Yeah.
No, he's beaten Owen Coy for Jamshedpur as well. So if you look at the coach profile, that's again an ISL finalist coach. So he's beaten Abbas, he's beaten Owen Coy, and he's beaten Lopera. So you can't beat bigger coaches in the country right now. So I mean, if this is not proving that he's good, then I don't know what is. But that aside, he's always been a fighter. He's always been a good organizer of teams, and it was not even like classic Khalid Jamil, side where they just sit and they put in a dogged performance. That's what he used to do in his Mumbai days.
Yeah.
But this was, I thought they played really well. They moved the ball really well. Again, I think Bangalore has a great scouting team in terms of identifying talent. It's just that these talents don't perform for their teams. So last year we saw with Onbu. This year we are seeing with Brown. He's now scored 2 goals in the last match.
Just on Brown.
Yeah. So I've always been a big fan of Khalid Jamil. I'll share a personal story as well. I think in the season they won the I League when they were in Chennai. So back then there was no noticeable trend that Aizawl was going to win the match. They'd come there to play Chennai City FC. And strangely, I had to come home. I think it was my brother's wedding or something, which meant I couldn't be at the press conference in which Khalid was there. I got his number, tried to call him for an interview, it never worked out. I messaged him. He might think that I harassed him in terms of the request. I just kept, asking, is that possible? Because I was a big fan of his work in Mumbai. And what happened later was that he won the league, and I was like, oh my god, I missed out on the best interview possible. Like, I wanted to interview him before the hype, before there was this chance that he's going to win the league. And I've always been a big fan of his work. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him at Calcutta clubs, but yeah, just good. I don't want to I think we've discussed this again and again about how Indian coaches should be given chance and all. I think Khalid just come out and there and said, this is what we can do. And I think Pradyum also did really well in his limited time with Pune, and I think these guys are all looking for their opportunities, and hopefully we'll see something.
What I didn't know, well, just mentioning on the changes in the ISL and allowing Indian coaches, that might be one way of reducing the costs, because that is a cost imposed, isn't it? That you need to get a foreign manager. That's going to be a lot more than getting an Indian-born manager. But coming to an Indian-born manager, what I didn't know, because you said we need to talk about Khalid, and that's why I was thinking Shubnam has seen what you wanted to talk about quite rightly, actually, was that he's Kuwaiti but Indian citizen. I didn't know that about him.
He was born in Kuwait, and he's not had like a very successful career as a player, but from what I've not seen him, but from what I've asked others, since I was always fascinated by him, something about him that was always fascinating. So I've always been tracking this guy. What has he been up to? Is he coaching some sides? So he was always a very clever guy on midfield. He was a very clever midfielder, and I think strangely, if you look at say Pep Guardiola, all these really good midfielders that are good coaches. I don't know if it's because you get access to the defense and forward or whatever, but like Antonio Conte, there is something about midfielders and coaches. I think they understand the game really well, which was my hope with Frank Lampard as well. I always thought he'd make a good coach. He's one of the most cleverest footballer I've seen, tying his runs to perfection. And it was not like he was blessed with Messi like ability. He just had the brains as a footballer. So maybe that's an element as well. Khalid Jamil as well. learning his trade. But yeah, I think I mean, yeah, Kuwait part. I cannot assume that about it. But yeah, I
No,
think
no,
it was.
I just
Yeah,
assumed he was Indian, and it's
I
just
mean,
one.
he's an Indian.
He is Indian, of course, yeah, but in Kuwaiti born, and he had to take up Indian citizenship, I think, to play for the national team, which is a lot of. That's a huge commitment, isn't it? But also the fact that we did speak to about this, the fact that I know you rated him, and you were saying, he's really good when he spoke about the sacking of the Spanish coach, and the fact that Khalid was not even part of the coaching staff. He was running the academy, and he was brought in
No,
from that.
he was part of the coaching staff in the first few matches, and then he was demoted. I don't know what the right, I don't know what was the right thing that they did, or given a different designation. It was a little murky as to what was happening, which is why I sort of also said like I was wondering if Gerard Lusaki had politics behind it. Was it like a Khalid Jamil fraction saying, "Hey, we want him, we want this Spanish guy," and did that happen? I don't know. Did. I'm just guessing here. I'm not accusing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, which is why there was something happening, and when Khalid took over, I was like, maybe there was some, player power, maybe there was some politics that happened. And we also thought it was a financial decision, right? Because, foreign coaches cost considerably high, and a lot of teams tend to take the foot off their pedal once they realize they're not going to make it to the playoffs. So it kind of seemed like a move, but look at where Northeast is, right? Clearly, all that I say doesn't, do not turn out to be. Here's a good example.
Well, I say not all, but you did mention him as a coach and a very good coach, so that part's true. But it's just the fact that he's had an incredible start. And I was watching the game yesterday, and even the commentators were saying, when Mumbai City got one back, that this is the perfect solution, a situation for Khalid, that he has a lot of 1-0 tight wins. So tactically, he seems to be defensively minded, but his teams are playing attacking football.
I mean, he got all three were 2-1 wins, right?
Yeah.
I think all three victories have been 2-1s. Yeah. But yeah, he's known for being a defensive coach first. But also, let's remember, I mean, we don't really talk about it, but so most of the football that we associate with Khalid Jamil is Aizawl and Mumbai, and both teams were not, front runners. They were not expected to do things. So you can also understand why a coach wants to play that, because he's got limited resources. He doesn't have perhaps the best player in his team or anything. So he had to make do with what he got. So to say that, so it's like saying Sam Allardyce is a defensive coach. You don't know. We've not seen Sam Allardyce manage a top side, or Owen Coyle is a defensive coach is what we thought, and here he came and he started attacking and playing this football. So it's also probably down to the opportunity that we get.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And but just talking about the chances of Northeast and maybe getting into the playoffs, it's very tight now, and a lot of, well, I was going to say shock results, but we shouldn't say that really. We've seen it here in the Premier League, and they're putting it down to the the environment and no fans and what have you. But in India it's different. They're playing in that bubble. Is that what we're seeing? Certain teams playing better, or we're not giving them enough credit that they are where they are and they're challenging the so-called top four now this season? Do you think that's a natural progression of football, or is it just the season we are in and the situation we're in that we're seeing these sort of results, and these other teams being in contention, a lot more teams being in contention to get into the top four?
I mean, let's be honest, I don't know how much of ISL atmospheres matter. Okay? It's not like all these stadiums were full and noisy. I mean, Kerala Blasters in the initial part of the season, yes, but once the results start going down, even the audience is quite winning, close to like 10,000, which is quite small if in a huge stadium with 60,000 capacity. So, yeah, I think you could argue these things, but I would just say the likes of Bangalore have been poor. and there is no running away from that fact. So if a Hyderabad or a Northeast are better in the league, it's because it played well. And it's not because Bangalore didn't have fans to back them up or this and that. I mean, we've been discussing about Bangalore ever since in our podcast ever since we started doing this. I think that team has not shown what it's capable of. Say in under Roka or even Westwood, they were little winners. I mean, it was that mentality monsters thing that Pratim always called them and or talking about. But like we've not seen the mentality monsters in Bangalore. It's not been seen inside. Sunil Chetri seems really agitated. Every interview he says like, I don't know what's going wrong. I mean, you sacked Quadrat, now Musa is in charge, it's the same thing. There seems to be something wrong. I feel Gurpreet is not even playing to 60% of his ability.
No, we've said this, yeah.
Yeah, it's just so that team needs some kind of magic. It can be in terms of 4 or 5 good signings and saying, we are now transitioning to a new team with young potential stars and let's try something new or get something. I mean, they had a big chance in signing somebody like Sandesh Chicken and sort of saying, hey, good, we've got you an Indian, central defender who's going to fight it out. But they've not done that, and they really need that. It's not going to come with changing coaches. I think there needs to be something really fresh and overhaul in some sense. This team seems a little lacking in juice.
Yeah, and when was the last time you would have thought BFC would have lost a 2-goal lead with about 5-6 minutes to go? But a great comeback for Hyderabad there.
And to a side that outplayed them. I mean, Hyderabad deserved everything they got.
Yeah. But just looking at the league overall, we're coming to the last quarter of the season, and it's very, very tight. And obviously, the top 2 are going to be there because of the nature of the points they've got. Even ATK probably need 5 points, and they'll clinch the top 4. But even FC Goa were pulling away now; they're being bunched up again. So it's very tight between third and right down to East Bengal, you could say, in a way, because they've been playing decent football. They've transitioned into a good team. I thought they deserved. I thought they deserved to win against FC Goa the other day. I mean, they missed the penalty, but it's getting very tight, and it's going to be interesting last part of this season. And I would like 2 teams that are not usually there to be in the playoffs. And I think Khalid will do no harm if he gets Northeast there in terms of Indian coaches as well.
Yeah, I mean, one for the Indian coaches and one for the Indian players. Hyderabad. A lot of Hyderabad's performance has been down to the fact that they've got like a good sort of young Indians playing hearts out, and even the coach himself said, they train like animals, so there's nothing more I can ask, and that's good. That's kind of what I want to see. So I would definitely want both Northeast and Hyderabad there up top, which sadly like FC Goa not making it, but even if FC Goa makes it, it's not a bad thing. But
no.
you want new contenders. Like you always want the monotony sort of thing. So, But
even if we go down the route of one of the old big teams, I'm saying it jokingly, please. But Kerala, they've got a big game today. But if they get a result there, they're in the hunt.
I mean, I think Kerala sort of thought ISL is Indian stalemate league and not Super League, because I think lot of draws when they could have easily won a couple of matches. I mean, that victory could have really changed things. I mean, that's been the pattern of the season, I guess. A lot of draws. So many draws this season, I've lost count. But I think Kerala missed a few opportunities that way. Was it against FC Goa? I mean, a couple of times where there was a red card and they didn't capitalize on that and things like that. So
yeah, even the game against Jamshedpur during the week, I think they should have won that as well. It was a 0-0, but they're not too far away. So
I mean, there was a ghost goal. It was almost like Frank Lampard's goal. It kind of went inside, but it was more goal line tracking. was not, not given to the team. But yeah, it's just
But
I don't
it's good.
care like India.
But I think it's really good for Indian football. So many teams still in contention, and it makes it for interesting last part of the season and even the playoffs, because you don't. I mean, if you come up against one of these teams that make it into the playoffs for the first time, even for the likes of Mumbai City, as they found out against Northeast, it's not going to be easy for them in the playoffs as well. So really good end to the season, interesting end to the season. We'll see how it pans out. But I also wanted to mention the I-League, and I've been catching some of the games. I think the Federation's got the YouTube channel and putting on highlights. So some of the games, I know it's only the highlights. You don't see the whole game, so you don't see how what standard it is or what the game was like. But I really enjoyed watching the highlights as well. Some decent football being played.
A lot of open football.
Yes. A lot of attacking football.
Yeah, a lot of attacking football. It almost feels like most of them are playing without a pressure, because this out doesn't matter. So everybody's like, go attack, have fun. It's like school football. And school football without consequences, like classes playing each other. It's just a lot of fun. As usual, ideally unpredictable. You can't see it. Last year we having this discussion about Rao, and we're like at that point I think Rao was like really at the bottom, and we were like, and I said maybe Rao could also come up in this season. They've been playing well. Like Churchill always fly. They always start well, Churchill, and then something happened and they both of them has been disappointing. One match they play well and one match they didn't play well. I thought. Before the season, I had in my mind that Jammu Kashmir and Punjab would be two good sides. They have also struggled. So I really don't know what to make of this. In fact, the likes of Aizawl and the teams that I really didn't expect to make the cut have been performing well. Mohammedan Sporting new into the league, but they are like, they've already been there. Chennai struggling. So such a bizarre league. There's no continuity. You can be like season winners in one season and then next season come up and be really pathetic. So not a lot to analyze.
Yeah, just looking at the table, even there, it's very, very tight from second to 10th. One win and you can go second. So
and then the format is that it's not your classic league. So once you're done with a round of games, then they'll split into the team for winner. So it's divided into like 6 clubs, and then the top league will fight. The top teams will play each other, and the bottom half will play each other, and the bottom half, whoever finished bottom, is going to get relegated. So it's very important that you play well now, because you don't want to miss out on the first half.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'm not sure what the number of games is before they split into promotion and championship.
Every team plays each other.
Right, so 10 games, so they're halfway through, really. But it's still very, very tight. Like I said, even Naraka, who are 10th, only 3 points off Trow in second place. Obviously, the Arrows won't get relegated, but we'll see how that pans out. But again, we don't know if it's down to the season and the environment that they're so tight a league, or the standard is closing between the big teams and the so-called big teams and the smaller teams. But interesting finish there as well to the first stage. But no, and as usual, the hour has gone over, and but it's been really fantastic speaking about various topics that we've had today, and obviously starting with the sacking of our beloved Frank, as we say in England. He was hard done by, but we'll get over it, I'm sure. But fantastic.
We love Lampard. I think personally one of my favorite Chelsea players ever. I still can't forget the way he pushed off Messi and passed ball to Ramirez, and that led to the goal against Barcelona. Just little things. I don't remember his goal so much. I remember the push. So yeah, he's a player that you've always loved, and I'm sure Chelsea fans will understand that this is how it is.
Well,
you can't not qualify this.
I think a start will be beating Tottenham, your arch rivals, on Thursday. If Tuchel wants to get onto the right side of fans very quickly, that's the place to start, beating Tottenham. So that'll be a really interesting game on Thursday, and I look forward to speaking to you about it next week as well. But fantastic, Nevin, as always, brilliant insight from yourself. We'll see which of the top echelons of football are listening to you, taking in what you're saying, and we'll see what changes they bring this week. But thank you again, my friend. You stay safe, and we'll speak to you again next week.
Yeah, sure. Take care.